Okay, I'm live. Okay, I got a question for you. And of course, I will probably answer the question I'm going to ask. Donald Trump, is he really anti war? Well, President Trump is known to be skeptical of military action. But then again, I wonder, is he? In the 2016 primaries, when he was seeking the Republican nomination for president, Trump kind of ran to the left of the other Republicans in terms of foreign policy, while he was doing the really obnoxious right wing nativism when it came to things like immigration and even blowing right wing dog whistles on questions of race and race relations. But then he would go and do things like make anti-war statements. So it was kind of like he was running as sort of a different kind of Republican. Some ways mm, for the worse, some ways for the better. But even when he was running in some ways for the better, it turns out that it was all a big facade. I'm talking about the more benign aspects of his campaign, and I'm going to go into that. Um, Trump basically made it very clear that he opposed the Iraq War back in 2002, 2003. Whether he did or not, I don't know. But if he was skeptical and didn't believe in going to war with Iraq back in 2003, it's possible. Back then, he supported Medicare for all. We're talking about a more liberal Donald Trump at one point in his life. There was once upon a time, a liberal Donald Trump, but he ran um, as kind of an outsider. And part of his thing about being an outsider was to take on the establishment Republicans. A stop clock gets the right time twice a day. So yeah, he was criticizing Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, and all the other neocons, and so was Rand Paul. Just as an aside, between Rand Paul and Donald Trump, I would say that maybe Rand Paul is the better man. Although I do have some problems with Rand Paul too. But they were running. Well, Donald Trump was running and very critical of criticizing the GOP for supporting all these foreign wars, and he promised to get out of all these skirmishes that the United States has been involved with. If he's sincere, it's not so much out of pacifism or or a dovish worldview, but more out of maybe an old right beautiful known as isolationism. Well, and the campaign trail during the primaries, he was linking up with the populist right or the paleocons, and campaigning against the neocons. Now, most of the people listening to this probably know what the difference is between a paleoconservative and a neoconservative, but there are people that may watch this and hear these terms and not have the foggiest what the hell it means. So I'm going to go and explain what a neocon and a paleocon is. Just like the left having various worldviews and sub ideologies within the broader left, the right also have various worldviews and sub ideologies too. And within conservatism, I mean, you have basically two camps. Well, there's actually several camps within conservatism or contemporary American conservatism. And I define conservatism as coming of age during the days of Reagan. And within the conservative movement, America is living still through the age of Reagan, 40 years later. And Ronald Reagan was able to bring about um, basically the he was able to bring about social conservatives, or what is known as the Christian right, um, people who were more in the business mindset, or I guess economics, more of a libertarian bent on things. He was able to bring about the people who are obsessed with a strong muscular defense policy, and basically a very aggressive foreign policy. Um, Neoconservatives, and he had people who were fiscal conservatives. I mean, it was all kinds of ideologies that worked within this Reagan coalition. But it came down to basically two broader camps of conservatism that exist today, and that broader camp is neoconservatism versus paleoconservatism. Now, what is neoconservatism? In spite of the company that the neocons keep today, the movement actually was born out of the 1930s American Trotskyite movement. I know what I'm talking about. And a lot of Trotskyites that had their view of the world, they, and we'll make a long story short, they ended up in the broader left, between the New Deal liberalism of FDR and Great Society liberalism of LBJ, and the smaller um, democratic socialist movement of Eugene Debs and Norman Thomas, what one would call a Cold War liberal, um, domestically pro-labor, domestically social democratic in their worldview, and on foreign policy, very hawkish, very anti-communist. And that was originally, they weren't called neoconservatives, but these were the people that would become neoconservatives as they moved away from, they kept their anti-communism and their pro foreign policy aggressivism, with America flexing its political and military muscle around the world. But then they kind of discarded their progressive economics and their liberal left view of the world, and basically found themselves in the Reagan coalition. Names like Gene Kirkpatrick comes to mind. Names like Paul Wolfowitz also comes to mind. Elliot Abrams. Yeah, and I mean, even William Bennett, who was the drug czar during the George Bush senior presidency, he was a former leftist in Students for a Democratic Society back in the 1960s. So these people have leftist views and leftist roots. Even radio talk show host Rush Limbaugh has been rumored to have been belonged to the youth section of the Trotskyite Socialist Workers Party, the Young Socialist Alliance. I think he's denied it, but it kind of makes sense since he is a neocon. But the thing about neoconservatism is that they found their, some of their biggest cheerleaders turn out to be evangelical Christians. And what Kyle Kalinske called movement conservatism is basically another word for neoconservatism. Basically, everything that orbits around the Heritage Foundation, the American Enterprise Institute, the 700 Club, Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, and talk radio in general. A lot of the TV preachers, all of these people, and people from the business community, all along with the military-industrial complex, or the right-wing side of the military-industrial complex, all mesh into this movement called um, neoconservatism. A paleoconservative is basically an old line conservative going back to the days of Robert Taft and maybe Barry Goldwater, Robert Taft, Joe McCarthy, going on back to the 1930s. The people who were who are not too enthused about the New Deal, very isolationist in their worldview, and pretty much was skeptical in their own way. They were skeptical of big business and corporate influence. So it's not that they were socialists or progressives, but they sort of have a view of Americana that or an ideal about Americana that they felt like was taken away from them. And they're more your old line conservatives called paleo conservatives. Some of them can be sensible libertarians. Some of them can be really paranoid lunatics like the John Birch Society. And then you get into the really dark side of paleo conservatism, and some of it can lead as a pipeline toward white nationalism. Not saying that everybody who's a paleo conservative is that. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there are areas where if somebody's not careful, it can lead toward that line of thinking. Well, in the Trump administration, it's a divided administration. You have you have basically the establishment Republicans that Donald Trump had around him. He talked about draining the swamp, but when you have establishment Republicans all around you, you're not draining the swamp. And you think about it, um, appointing people like John Bolton, which he had the good sense to fire him eventually. People like Mike Pompeo, Gene Haskell, these people in the administration, and of course, got to remember Mike Pence is also a neocon. But Donald Trump might be considered a part-time paleocon, and meaning that he has his side of trying to flex the political muscle abroad too. So he's kind of breaking a campaign promise by by violating some of the things he said, like non-interventionism. But anyway, killing the a high-ranking general in the Iranian military is not very very peaceful. Um, you know, um, Selling arms to Saudi Arabia, who enables terrorism against the West, isn't very anti-war. And those weapons that we sell to Saudi Arabia is being funneled to Al Qaeda and all the other crazy radicals from that part of the world who commit acts of terrorism against the West. But within Yemen is actually committing a genocide. As I hate to say it, but the United States right now has blood on its hands because it's actually indirectly assisting a genocide in Yemen by selling arms to Saudi Arabia, which is being funneled into Yemen to some really bad guys. The economic embargo and the bullying of Venezuela by the Trump administration is also kind of a violation of his campaign promise. Now, North Korea is the bright side right now. Relations has somewhat improved in the last few years between the United States and North Korea. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but it is a little bit better than it used to be. And I'll give him credit on North Korea. But he promised to pull out of Iraq. He promised to pull out of Afghanistan, and they're not out of Iraq, and they're not out of Afghanistan, and that's got to stop. I mean, really, that's got to stop. Uh, so and he's continued the droning, using drones. That still continues. He believes in waterboarding. Um, So, my big question is to the well-meaning people who are part of the populist right, who are skeptical of war. My question is exactly where is it again that Donald Trump is this anti-war person, this activist? this dub. Where is he? I don't really see that much difference between the current policy in abroad and the policy of the Obama administration or the Bush administration. Obama. I mean, I'm not being partisan because Obama pretty much promised the same thing, and he pretty much continued the Bush policies after promising not to do to continue it. So, thing about Donald Trump is I don't know where the heck people get the idea that he's anti-war. Um, I mean, and I don't understand it. And here's the thing: if he wants to prove he's anti-war, he would just tell the military-industrial complex to fuck off and do the right thing and remove the troops from Afghanistan. That right there will be an important signal that he's trying to do something. But until that's done, I don't see where he's actually this person who is skeptical of military intervention. I mean, I don't care for Tucker Carlson, Fox News, but I'd rather for Trump to listen to Tucker Carlson give him advice on foreign policy than someone like Mark Levin, who never met a war that he didn't like and gets a freaking erection out of bombing the crap out of other countries. So I mean, that's where it is right now. So when people tell me, well, the Democrats are not that great on foreign policy and they're just continuing, and they had, Joe Biden voted for the war in Iraq and everything, all true, all's true. But tell me where has Trump significantly improved? Oh, and that's another thing, the Iranian deal, I mean, pulling out of that deal. The one foreign policy thing that was really good about Obama, he went and pulled out of the Iranian deal. And why did he do that? Well, I think it was to placate to the religious right. Because I saw a rally on TV years ago that was opposing Obama's attempts to have a treaty with Iran. And when I saw people like Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty and Sarah Palin, all these people like that, I'm thinking, okay, Sarah Palin, Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty, gee, that's just enough to know you're on the wrong side of an issue when you have someone like Phil Robertson and Sarah Palin advocating on such a position. So anyway, it's just these are thoughts right now in the morning about this whole notion about Trump being a little bit different from predecessors on things like foreign policy. And I'm just going to say I'm mighty skeptical at this point, but I don't mind being proved wrong. And so if Trump is online, he accidentally stumbled across this obscure channel. All I got to say is, Donnie, if you want to prove that you're a different kind of Republican, start pulling the troops out of Afghanistan right now, and maybe some of us will believe you. Until then, you're just another George W. Bush. If you like what you heard, press like, comment either way, yay or nay. Tell me how great I am and tell me how full of shit I am. Share this information. Subscribe, and as a First Amendment absolutist, it's incumbent upon me to say that if you have an issue you feel strongly about, and you have a platform, please utilize it because we are indeed the muckrakers of our time. So, like, subscribe, share, tell everybody about this channel. Do your own thing as far as having a platform. And until next time, peace and Bernie Sanders for president in the year 2024. And no, I wasn't kidding when I said that.